What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
It does not matter if the war is not real, or when it is, that victory is not possible. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. The essential act of modern warfare is the destruction of the produce of human labor. A hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance. In principle, the war effort is always planned to keep society on the brink of starvation.
Mr. Trump, there's a new Bloomberg poll out that says 65% of primary voters like your proposed temporary Muslim ban. In the meantime, you turn on the television, it seems like, you know, every commentator hates the idea. The Republican elites, the Republican establishment teamed up with the Democrats, it looks like, where they're all trying to take you down.
You know, Steve, that's been the story of my life, and I've done very well. I have to tell the truth. I'm a truthful person, and, you know, the establishment is foolish. These are foolish people. I watched your piece before me where you're talking about closing mosques in France.
In France, right. They've closed three so far.
Right, and the woman from the Daily Mail who's saying what a disastrous problem they have in UK, and all of these things, and a lot of people don't say that. You know, in London, they're talking about, oh, what Donald Trump said. Well, I have friends that say they got a lot of problems, and they don't want to be honest with their people, and it's a camouflage. No, the establishment seems to be against me, but I'll tell you who's not against me are the voters, because the people in the street, the people that you interview on the street, you know, they had one network yesterday that went out looking for people. And they wanted to find people. They couldn't find anybody against me. All the people were saying good things.
We've got some people on the street we're going to talk to in just a minute after this interview, and we're going to find out how they feel about
that's
your
very
comments.
good. I like that.
Mr. Trump, I'm just hearing now that you have canceled, and tell us if this is true or not, you've canceled your visit, which was scheduled a couple of weeks ago with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He did reject your recent comments about Muslims. Is that why you are no longer planning to visit?
Well, you know, he was very much, in fact, I did a campaign ad for him.
My name is Donald Trump, and I'm a big fan of Israel. And frankly, a strong prime minister is a strong Israel. And you truly have a great prime minister. In Benjamin Netanyahu, there's nobody like him. He's a winner. He's highly respected. He's highly thought of by all. And people really do have great, great respect for what's happened in Israel. So vote for Benjamin. Terrific guy, terrific leader, great for Israel. And I saw people, and I saw them on television, and I read about it on the internet.
Donald Trump is doubling down with his claim that he saw Muslims in Jersey City celebrating on 9/11. At a campaign event in Columbus last night, he quoted a Washington Post article published a week after 9/11.
In Jersey City, within hours of two jetliners plowing into the World Trade Center, law enforcement authorities detained and questioned a number of people who were allegedly seen celebrating the attacks and holding tailgate style. Tailgate, you know what that means? Tailgate. That means football games, Ohio State, thousands of people.
Trump says the article proves he's telling the truth. But the reporter who wrote the article says, I certainly do not remember anyone saying that thousands or even hundreds of people were celebrating. That was not the case.
Tuval Aviv is a counterterrorism advisor to the U.S. Congress, but was once a spy for Israel's Secret Service Mossad. He says Urban Moving was a front company for Israeli intelligence, and that some of its workers were spying illegally in the U.S.
Israel has engaged in intelligence gathering in friendly countries. Some of it is done with permission, and some of it probably has been done without permission in areas that is vital to Israeli interest, where large Arab communities operate and live, where there's a lot of fundraising for terrorist activities in the Middle East. That's the old undercover. This is the old way of gathering intelligence, which America has not used. If a decision is being made to put a bomb under a building, during and after prayer on a Friday night in a mosque, you have to be in the mosque. You will not be able to do it from a satellite.
Sources close to Israeli intelligence have told Channel 4 that urban moving produced no information that could have prevented 9/11. But whatever the truth of the conspiracy story, it's flushed out the possibility that Israel spies on America, its closest ally, an espionage tactic that both governments would prefer kept secret.
There's certain type of information that methods of collections that you don't want to share with the local host country. Systems that you use, contacts that you make, undercover operations that you penetrating other terrorist networks. Those types of information you don't share with anybody.
The urban moving five were eventually deported to Israel for visa violations. Channel 4 understands, from sources close to US intelligence, that the condition of their release was that Israel promised not to spy in the US without permission. Then, as now, the Israeli government publicly denies it spies in the US.
You know, in 1995, I wrote a book called Fighting Terrorism, and I said that if we don't arrest the tide of Islamic militant terrorism, militant Islamic terrorism, then the next thing that will be is not a car bomb in the World Trade Center, but a nuclear bomb. Now, it wasn't a nuclear bomb. It was a 350-ton conventional bomb. But I'm sure you don't doubt, and nobody who listens to us now doubts, that if these maniacal movements and the regimes that support them develop nuclear weapons, they will use them. And then you're talking about not the horrendous casualties. And by the way, it breaks the heart just to listen to the stories that you gave earlier. Now imagine that the horrific toll, as horrific as it is today, would pale in comparison to hundreds of thousands or millions of casualties. What is important to understand is that you have to dismantle the entire terror empire, and especially before its main practitioners, the terror states of Iran and Iraq, acquire nuclear weapons. And this, I think, has been a wake-up call from hell. It is telling us, you have the power now to act, summon the will, because the terrorists have the will to destroy America, to destroy freedom, to destroy all of America's allies and all the democracies, Israel being simply on the front line. They have the will, but they don't have the power.
Netanyahu said, quote, "We're benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq." End quote. Netanyahu then reportedly said these events, quote, "swung American public opinion in our favor."
When we see Islamic State committing atrocities week after week, day after day, what's interesting to note is that all of the videos, the video evidence, is coming out of one little Israeli website called Site Intelligence Group. I think it's based in McLean, Virginia, and the woman who runs it is named Rita Katz. And she was on CNN when the second American beheading video was shown on TV. Mm-hmm. She told on CNN, she explained that it just so happens that we aired this film before the group aired the film because we had a copy beforehand. Well, how did they have a copy beforehand? You know?
Good question. So where do the Saudis fit into this? Because, I mean, apparently, according to the 28 missing pages for the 9/11 Commission, there's Saudi financing that's going into the operation. Where would they fit into the 9/11 operation?
Well, with all due respect for the Saudis, I would have to say they're kind of like useful idiots. They've been played. They may also be, of course, willing to go along with some of these things because
I don't think they would oppose. I don't think the Wahhabist mentality would really object to the use of terrorism to
right,
spread their ideology.
and they are supporting, as we know, they are supporting Islamic State. They are supporting these mercenaries and these rebels that are fighting in Syria.
Going back to the Taliban in the 80s, right?
Yeah, and they are, you know, they're dead set against Iran and Hezbollah and the Shiites. So, you know, but the Saudis, when you talk about those 28 pages, I don't know what those 28 pages say, but when they talk about Saudi involvement in 9/11, that is not consistent with all of the information that I have found, is that at the architectural level of this crime and the managerial level of this crime, the people who ran it, thought about it, conceived it, and then managed it, they're all Zionists, not Saudis. So, as I said, the Saudis were probably played or used or just useful idiots who were able to, you know, be snookered into a position where they look indictable.
Right.
Like they look culpable.
Well, but I think even above the Zionist level, you still have what's the British Empire, which is still a tactical, you know, how do you say, it's a tactical machine. You know, the British Empire is the one that formed Israel in the first place, is the one that created the Saudi Arabia, because Arabia obviously was not under Saudi control before the British gave it to them. It, you know, basically established the modern Middle East. And so they're tremendous architects, going back to Bernard Lewis and his arc of crisis policy in the late 70s, right, that Brzezinski bought into when they formulated the Afghan war against the Soviets, right? The idea we can use this radical Islam against, this is historical British policy, against any kind of sovereign nation state, be it USSR, be it China, be it Assad now in Syria, or, you know, Nasser and Sadat in Egypt before, right? So it's a very, to me, it's a British imperial policy that plays well into the Zionist, let's say, worldview.
But when you look at the British imperial policy, you have to look at who's behind that imperial policy, and you do find the fingerprints of the Rothschild family, for example. The Balfour Declaration, which created the state of Palestine, was basically like the birth certificate for the nation in 1917, was addressed to Lord Rothschild.
Yes.
And you know, the Rothschilds, they had their own interest there. They wanted to create this Jewish state. They wanted to protect the Suez Canal, which they had invested in and owned. But it's when we talk about the British Empire, who exactly are we talking about? That's what I'm pointing out. You know, because you know, the British have been snookered in the same way that we've been snookered into wars in the Middle East that are not in our national interest, and it's not in Britain's national interest either.
Well, again, that's the problem with empire. You lose your national interest when you become an empire, right? That's the whole point, is that you get caught up in these games that really destroy your nation, your industrial policies, for example, that might raise your working class. That all gets destroyed in the process of building.
But you have to look at who is the brain behind the empire. Like, for example, now we have this Ukraine crisis. Well, how did we get in this Ukraine crisis? We got into it because of the actions of Nuland, Victoria Nuland. She's married to Mr. Robert Kagan. Who brought us the war in Iraq, basically. The PNAC document you referred to that said that the United States should invade and occupy Iraq whether Saddam Hussein is on the throne or not. That was in 2000, right? Well, now she comes along and she's the one who brought us the crisis in Kiev. She supported it, and then she said
they had been pumping billions right into the
and two weeks before the government was overthrown, the elected government was overthrown, she was already naming who would be the prime minister. So I mean, it's like this is not an American empire. This is an American empire with a foreign brain, if you will, with a foreign agenda at the top. So it's very destructive of our nation. It's destructive of everything this nation stands for. And we are enslaved. We are enslaved to that deception that began on 9/11. And if we don't free ourselves from the deception of 9/11, if we don't understand that this is all based on deception, then we will remain enslaved to it.
And he's a good man, but I didn't want to put him under pressure. You know, he said we have a meeting, and he looks forward to the meeting and all of that, but I didn't want to put him under pressure, number one. I also did it because I'm in the midst of a very powerful campaign that's going very well, and it was not that easy to do. So I would say lots of different reasons. I could have done it. It was semi-scheduled, but I decided I'd really focus on this. You know, I was the Grand Marshal of the Israeli Day Parade when it was a very, very tough time for Israel, and I have a lot of Israel friends and a lot of support, a lot of friends from Israel, and a tremendous amount of support from the people of Israel. And believe me, I think that the worst thing that's ever happened to Israel happens to be Barack Obama. That I can tell you. Well, so all I'm doing is postponing it, and I think that was the better alternative.
That brought us low economically, morally. We went to war against a guy who had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. It was a total pretext. It's inexplicable. And there you go to Cheney, there you go to Bush, there you go to the Jewish neocons who wanted to remake the world. Maybe I can say that because I'm Jewish, and to bring about a certain result in the Middle East.
I'm not really sure that you can.
Okay.
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure that you can.
Go ahead.
It'd be much worse if a Southern Baptist said that. But
no sensible man is ever going to join your army and risk getting killed unless there's a strong reason. And that's fear. And we knew how to create it. The Bolsheviks are coming, or whichever enemy of the weak it was. The Poles are coming, the Czechs are killing, the Sudeten Germans, and they'll try and kill you too. Well, just look what's been done now in the name of freedom and liberty.
I'm a wartime president. Yep. Look at me. Well, the wartime president, it's not a matter of if they strike, it's when. Could be next Tuesday. I've heard that from the president's lips. The fear is constant, and it's just, for instance, every child of 9 outside the United States knows that Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda and nothing to do with Osama bin Laden. As a matter of fact, the two men despised each other. Every day for months, one day it would be the vice president, the next day it would be the president, saying how Saddam Hussein, we got to get him. We got to get him because of 9/11. We got to take care of evil all over the world. Bring him back dead or alive. Now, if the people hear that from what they assume is their president, elected president, they're bound to believe it's bound to, there's some residue that stays in people's heads. They can't keep lying all that much.
And so, with terror, they have been able to come up with the USA Patriot Act, which nobody seems to be able to get their hands on. I can't find it. Bits of it we get, but that's about all, which shreds our civil liberties. And we're now at war with just about everybody. We're talking about possible strikes against Iran, North Korea, Syria. We have gone barbarous. We have gone back 2,000–3,000 years in human history to almost pre-Roman times. And the rationale among themselves is we got to have that oil. Well, the money we spend on a war, we could develop an alternative to fossil fuels. It's not all that, it's not that far away in the future. But we don't. We prefer the wars.
Now, we can do it if we're wrong, Alex. You apologize. I'd apologize if I was wrong. But they were celebrating, and they were celebrating the fall of the World Trade Center. I think that's disgraceful.